There's a reason the vast majority of reviews are positive for the first Gladiator film, and the second film doesn't quite compare, right? The second film seems to suffer from what I call, Avengers Infinity War syndrome. And that's a lot of movies these days, focusing on the superficial level of a film, right? Like action sequences, cool fight scenes, cool visuals, right? These are important things to have in a movie, of course, but it seems like the vast majority of movies these days just seem to be centered around this thing, right? Kind of like a fast food version of film where everything is just pure visuals, right? And pure action sequences. Again, that's not to say that Avengers Infinity War is not a good film. It definitely is, but what separated films from the past, like Gladiator, The Godfather, Fight Club, for example. Films like that, come around every now and then, but again, they're not so common anymore. And again, what separated these films from the rest is the actual storyline, right? The plot, the themes that the movie wanted the audience to think about, right? The messages that the movie wanted to give out. That's what made the movie so great, accompanied, of course, with excellent directing and cool visuals and all that. So I'm just going to be going over 3 things that really stood out to me from the first Gladiator film, and things that we can apply in our own lives and can be of value to our lives. So the first thing that really stood out to me in this movie is the theme of selflessness versus selfishness, right? So this is beautifully portrayed by 2 of the main characters, Maximus and Commodus, right? The son of the emperor. If you take a look at these 2 characters, they're just the complete polar opposites. You have on one hand Commodus, who is self-centered, right? He's always thinking about himself. How can he improve his situation? What he can take from other people. And he very rarely ever thinks about anybody else. And if he does, it all just goes back to how can they help me? How can they, help me improve or advance my plans? And this is portrayed in various points in the film, right? And it's just a pretty consistent character trait of his, right? You have in the beginning of the film, his father, Marcus Aurelius, is dying, right? And instead of being there for his father and worrying about his father's health, he's more preoccupied with who's going to be the next emperor of Rome, right? And he's, on his dad's back, trying to get him to hand over the throne to him, right? And when he doesn't, when he tells him that Maximus is the one that's going to rule, he has this childlike look to his face, right? This spoiled child look to his face, completely in disbelief of what his father just said, instead of, being objective and actually thinking about the greater good of Rome and thinking about whether he's qualified or not to even take the throne, right? He's just thinking about himself. And again, he's a very self-centered character. And then you have, on the other hand, Maximus, who's just a complete opposite of him, right? All throughout the film, it's all about sacrifice and what he can provide to others. And he's always thinking about the greater good. He's thinking about his family, right? He's thinking about higher things that are not, fleeting or superficial. And because of this character trait of his, things just kind of naturally come to him too. He doesn't even ask for the throne of Rome, right? He's just having conversation with one of his friends, Marcus Aurelius. And he tells him, Marcus Aurelius just offers the throne to him, right? Because of who he is, because he doesn't have that unhealthy ambition, I guess, to be emperor. He's just worried about his own life. He's worried about his family and how he could be there for them. And again, this is something that we can take away from his character. The concept of just becoming the best version of yourself, becoming so high value that things just kind of naturally come to you, instead of being a needy person, like kind of like how Commodus is, right? Being needy and insecure and trying to get things to go your way all the time, instead of just letting things flow to you. That's not to say to be passive or to not take any action towards your goals, but again, it's just about becoming being centered on the right things, right? And just becoming a high value person, and a high, in all senses, right? Physically, mentally, morally wise, values wise, right? And this is something that you can see all throughout the film. Things just kind of naturally happen for Maximus. He's never in desperation really for for anything. He just kind of takes the punches as they come, right? And there's this scene almost at the end of the film where Maximus's character is beautifully, it's symbolized by a particular scene, right? You have Commodus and Maximus facing off against each other, and Maximus is in this Christ-like pose, right? He's chained by, he's chained up and he can't really move, and he has his arms spread open, right? Like kind of like Christ was on the cross. And this is symbolic, of course, right? It's symbolic of who he is, and it's symbolic of his character, and it's foreshadowing what's about to happen, right? He ends up sacrificing himself for the greater good, right? Rome goes back to a proper leadership, right? He frees his friends that he met in the Colosseum, and he's able to go back to his family, right? I just wanted to include this particular scene in the video because I think it just beautifully just shows both characters, right, and who they are. So that's the first point: selfishness versus selflessness and sacrifice. The second point that I want to talk about is stoicism, right? Being stoic and unemotional in the face of adversity. This doesn't mean that you should be some sort of robot that never shows any sort of emotions, right? I think the point of stoicism, at least to me, is to just be grounded, right? And to not be overly emotional when adversity hits. Everybody could have a smile on their face when things are going their way, right? A true display of strength and character is when hard times hit, right? And when challenges come your way, and how you handle them, and what sort of attitude and just mood you handle them with, right? Do you take on a victim complex and say, why is this happening to me? Or you kind of the opposite and say, you know what, no matter what happens, I can handle this, and I'm sure I can learn something from this. And this is, again, shown through the character of Maximus. He could have easily, succumbed to his emotions, and rightfully so. In the beginning of the film, he obviously loses everything. He loses his family. He loses his leadership position. He loses, the prestige that came with it. He pretty much becomes the lowest of the low, and he has to start over from scratch, right? Against his will, really. He's trapped in this kind of nightmare scenario, right? Where he has to fight for his life, literally, and somehow has to crawl to freedom again. But in spite of all of that, right, his character is pretty consistent. He has this calm, cool, and collected look all throughout the film. And there are points where obviously he breaks down, but, again, and rightfully so. And being stoic doesn't mean you're this emotionless robot, right? Again, it just goes back to, at least in my opinion, just being strong in hard times. And again, this is shown through the character of Maximus. And the last point that I wanted to talk about that really stood out to me in this film, and there are many others, of course, this film is just a masterpiece, is the theme of moving forward no matter what happens. Maximus could have easily given up, nobody could have really blamed him for it, right? Again, he loses his family, he loses everything. He comes to the lowest of the low, to the lowest point in his life, yet he refuses to give up, and he just keeps going forward. Again, he's thrown into this Colosseum where he has to fight for his life and come against all these crazy enemies and scenarios, nightmarish enemies and scenarios. But he just keeps moving forward, and he is able to achieve his freedom at the end of the film, right? Even though he passes away, he's able to make a positive impact in the lives of others. And again, it just goes back to the first point I talked about, where he's focused on other people and not overly on himself. And because of this, a lot of positive things start to happen around him, right? He inspires the people around him. He naturally makes friends. He changes the situation that, not too long ago spiraled out of control. And he keeps going to the bitter end, right? He never gives up. So if you made it this far in the video, I thank you so much for listening. I just wanted to talk about this great film and some of the themes that really stuck out to me. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I make videos on topics that I find fascinating, whether it be a movie like Gladiator or a topic that's a little more out there like the Giants of the Past or the Titans of the Past. Just stuff that piques my interest in general. If you consider yourself open-minded and you don't get triggered when somebody suggests something that's a little out there, if you can do your own research and draw your own conclusions, then this channel is perfect for you. Thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.